Okay, so welcome to the NWC show. This is episode 6. We're joined with Stewart. If you want to introduce yourself, Stewart.
How you doing, guys? My name's Stewart. Wrestling daft idiot from beloved Scotland. This is a Scotland takeover today. Don't know what I'm saying, to be honest. Just I've been kind of in wrestling world for say about six months ish. Started off with doing some wrestling news. A company called Body Slam, then moved to the podcast world with guys at It's Your House. Now no longer there, and just chilling it, solo, just going what I'm doing, just shooting the breeze, as they would say.
Well, so I'm about the same. I got into this sometime last year when COVID hit, when I had to find something to do.
Went the fucking shit. Sorry, am I allowed to swear this, by the way?
It doesn't matter.
Right,
we're Scottish, you can't help it. So
you can't help it. You know what I mean? It's like second nature. Yeah, COVID was a bitch. It's a bitch.
Teaching kids in the house and stuff. I was like, I need to get something. I need to get something to feel like I'm doing something.
I didn't know the answers myself. My kids are dumb as shit now because I've not got a clue. Daddy, what's this? I've not got a clue. Pythagoras' theorem. Pythagoras is an arsehole. That's all he is.
Man, because my wee boys, he's in primary. Well, my wee boy, he's in primary 1. My wee girl's still in nursery.
Right.
The nursery have nothing. Nothing. It's like,
here's a pen and here's a piece of paper. Go and draw a cat.
Like today, it was like Chinese New Year, and I was like, "You haven't messaged me in 4 weeks. I've just been teaching her the primary 1 stuff because she starts in August, and then we've just been watching wrestling. I've been teaching her how to do jiu-jitsu and fun stuff, and then the skills people are oh, Logan seems to be learning better at maths, and I was like, because I've been teaching him cool stuff. He's sitting in a class, it doesn't work for me. Right, so the first question we always ask is, what got you into wrestling? What turned you on? What was that first moment that was like, this is my thing, I need to watch?
So, do you want to know what turns me on, or do you want to know about wrestling?
About wrestling, I know.
Right, okay.
Said that.
Just want to make sure before we go too much in depth. So, I've never been asked that question ever. And I'll be honest with you, I remember distinctly WrestleMania 7. That was my first memories of wrestling. And I can't remember, if I'm being honest. I remember getting it on VHS. I remember the purple VHS sleeve cover. Mm-hmm. And I had Hulk Hogan and Sergeant Slaughter on it with the lightning round it, like the cool way the old WrestleManias used to look. They used to all look the same, and you used to stack them in order and that. And I remember, I genuinely don't think it was the same year. I think my mum and dad must have got on, you used to get HMV sales and that, £2 for a VHS. I think it was one of them. And I was absolutely engrossed by it, and it was just I think it's one of the coolest WrestleManias ever. But I'm probably thinking that because it was my first one that I seen. Starting off with you think about the card, and that was the Rockers that were on it, Demolition, the Legion of Doom, Jake the Snake versus the model Rick Martel in a blindfold match. I mean, seriously, it's just ridiculous. But one thing that really got me intrigued and kind of sucked in would have been the Macho Man Randy Savage against the Ultimate Warrior match, the retirement match. I mean, it was just absolutely fantastic. It was. I remember distinctly when Macho Man came to the ring with Sensational Sherry. Mm-hmm. I just thought, who is this guy? How cool does this guy look? I fell in love with the man. He was amazing. And then all of a sudden you hear the music, and then it's the Ultimate Warrior coming, and he runs to the ring. And I remember his coat had a picture of Savage and the Warrior on the back of it. And I think, if I'm right in saying, I think his trunks had the winged eagle on his arse. It was just absolutely amazing. The match was class. And then obviously the main event was Slaughter against Hogan, and I just remember the whole Iraq thing, and I didn't understand. Was it Iran? Sorry, it was one of them. They were in war with, and I remember Slaughter was the American hero that turned heel and went against the United States of America, and Hogan being pro USA it was unbelievable. But being so young, I didn't quite understand it until now. And looking back, I'm thinking, Jesus, Slaughter was a fucking heel. You know what I mean? That was cool. You know what I mean? And so that was kind of it. And I remember kind of being at school and that, and all my friends were talking about it, and they were talking about recent events. And then there was always me going, aye, but remember WrestleMania 7? That was brilliant. You know, and I'm like, right, shit, there's more to life than just WrestleMania 7. And I'm like, what? But then
No,
it
I
just kind of
think
spiraled from there, aye.
it's quite similar. I was in my mum's friend's house and I saw it on the TV. So I kind of stood there and watched. I can't remember what it was. I was like 5. Then obviously back in the 90s, nobody had Sky or NTL or on like in Scotland. It was like that wasn't really a thing till like 2000 odds. So, but I remember in '99 in Glasgow. I don't know if you know, it's a place called the Forge. I was there and I got two VHSs. It was King of the Ring 1999 and WCW Bash at the Beach 99. It was 3, in fact. It was Springsteen. Aye, with the. I think it was Bash at the Beach. It had like the parking lot brawl. The guy like just like this big massive.
I'm going to be honest with you, right? See, Red WCW, I have got zero reckon. I have to watch the network. I was pro WWF every step of the way. I remember, sorry to interrupt you, but I remember would have been round about that year that Channel 5 picked up Thunder. And I remember watching it, and I remember being at my grandma's thinking, who the fuck are these people? But I knew Goldberg, I knew Hogan, I knew like the top end people. But like when you seen like probably at the time it would have been like Dean Malenko or you know like Perry Saturn and all these kind of guys. I'm like, I have no idea who you are. You're not Scotty Too Hotty. You know what I mean? You're not Val Venus. You know what I mean? Who the fuck are you? Yeah, WCW. I was never into it that much.
I was a WCW. Well, I grew up, so I was born in 1991. So like when I got into it, it was like NWO, DX, like at the peak, really.
Yeah.
So it was, you were just watching wrestling anywhere you could get it, because Channel 5 on a Saturday night had Nitro. You had your Thunder during the week. Then you had obviously your catch-up shows for WWE, like kind of during the
Sunday
at the
Night
weekend.
Heat was on like the 2 weeks like previous were in for us.
Then Velocity and stuff like that as well.
Velocity, yeah. I remember going to school because I never had Sky and a few of the boys did. I remember walking in going like, Mankind's champion. They're like, no, he's not. It's The Rock. And I'm like, but I just watched it last night. He's like, but it was like 2 weeks ago. I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake. I'm so far behind.
That was at the point when Sky started to get in out more like NTL and stuff like that. I remember everybody in our school got it pretty much like the same week. The next day it was like, I think it was 2000 or 1999 Armageddon, the primary school. The next day I remember going in and being like, oh, that was brilliant, wasn't it? And like catching the highlights of it in the magazines and stuff like that. And then everybody in the school had the magazine, and it was just like the peak that it could be. I remember we all got into trouble for doing like the DX sign. The
crop chop put me in detention so many times. So many times. Stuart, you got your homework. No, I haven't, miss. Suck it. Detention. Right, yes.
That whole time, like growing up in that like late 90s, early 2000s into the Ruthless Aggression period, is just like, people don't realise what it was like. Like today, you wouldn't get away with half the stuff that they've done.
I was watching some of the Attitude stuff today, and it was the Raw where Undertaker crucified Stone Cold just before rock bottom, and I'm watching it going, there would be no danger like the Fiend would do that. I mean, I know he just got burnt or buried, burnt alive or whatever, but like even that, to be fair, watching that I was a bit like, oh, that's a bit, bit much in 2020. But then like looking back at like 97, you're like, that happens all the time.
Somebody getting set in flames was like a weekly occurrence in like 97, 98.
The Brood did it every week. They came out and they were on fire.
I think as though like it's just obviously different time periods. It's a much bigger company than what it was back in 97.
Yeah, you've got to understand as well, like, whereas back then they were doing it to survive, whereas now they're doing it to make money. So there's it's night and day in that scenario. So you've got to give a bit of understanding towards why Vince is a bit more lenient into a bit more aware of what's being put out in front of, because obviously back then, WCW were kicking their arse, and it was obviously well publicised at how close they were to going out of business. But that's kind of the way we got to take the gloves off and think, let's just fight for ourselves, and they did, and it was absolutely amazing. Both shows Because, like I say, although I wasn't watching WCW at the time, I have, looked back and watched some of the stuff, and both shows were just absolutely fantastic. It was great.
The best thing I like about going back and watching some stuff is like, how did they do this? And like, this is really shit. Like, what the fuck are they doing here? This is really bad. Like, the getting Val Venus getting his penis, trying to get it chopped off and stuff like
that. Mr. Pee.
You're like, this
Mark
is so
Kenny
awkward.
Mark Kenny being a dad to a hand. May Young getting a tits at Royal Rumble 2000. Seriously.
I was talking the other day on a podcast about, obviously, we were saying Sergeant Slaughter was like the bad guy.
Yeah.
Like, we were saying, can he get away with stuff like that? So you wouldn't even be allowed to do that. This, like, today you couldn't be like, Iran against America because...
No. It'd be too political. But see, looking back, like, I genuinely... I'm going to put this out for my Twitter, like, when does this come out, sorry?
Tomorrow night.
So I've been following week, on Saturday, I'm going to put a thing out, because I don't think we have a heel like there was heels back then. So you see, back then, obviously, they had the kayfabe and they were like, legit sticking to it. Whereas now, we all know that it's I hate saying a work, but we all know kind of, that we're not stupid anymore in that terms. But you don't get heels like you used to. Like Slaughter at the time was a heel. Ric Flair was a heel. Whereas now a heel's like, say, Roman Reigns. He's cool. Kevin Owens was a heel, but he's cool. Sami Zayn was a heel, but he's cool. Because it's just, I don't know, it's just my opinion anyway. You don't have the same heels that you used to, apart from one, which I'll describe next week.
I honestly don't think you get like that really like I hate you type of heel like anymore. Like even if somebody's been a heel, they need to be that cool kind of guy. When it's like the cool guy isn't he always the...
but that's because of merchandise sales. That's all it is. That's all it is, because people, as much as Roman Reigns is supposed to be hated, they want that wreck, destroy, leave, whatever it is, t-shirt to sell, and that's what it'll be. That's all it's going to be, because NWO was the first to really do it. They were the heel group, and their merchandise flew off the ropes, and they're like, right, okay, let's run with it.
I just wish they would do, so my opinion, the last podcast I had, which was episode 5, was with Wrestling AEW Dark. We were talking about how the kind of old school wrestling, like, not old school, like Bret Hart, Owen Hart, that type of wrestling style can still work in this day. Like, you don't need to flip for no reason. 100%. And also, you can just literally be like progress the business and storytelling. Like, stop trying to make the 90s happen, because the 90s and early 2000s,
it worked out.
It doesn't work now. Like, it's too... We have the internet now, we don't have it then. And my opinion was, you were saying kayfabe's dead. We were talking about that quite a lot. Kayfabe, for me, I would say, well, it pretty much definitely is like nailed in the coffin, 6 feet under.
100%.
But like, I don't understand why you couldn't just keep it going. Like, if you're going to make this work, like a magician, everybody knows magic's fake, but how do you know it's doing it?
What?
The normal person,
it's fake.
Oh man, I'm sorry.
Next will tell me Santa Claus isn't real.
I can't say anything about that. My kids are in another room.
Sorry, right over there. It's me that buys the fucking presents, by the way. Now, fuck off.
Man, see, at Christmas, I was watching the Stone Cold Stunner Santa, and obviously his beard comes off and stuff like that, and the two of them were just shocked, and I was like, oh no, that's not the real Santa, don't worry about it. He's obviously away somewhere. We'll try to come up with an excuse. But
sorry, when you go.
Kayfabe being dead, I was saying, like, why do people not just keep it alive on social media? So, for instance, like, if you're a bad guy and you can still keep that bad guy persona on social media, do you know what I mean? Like,
MJF does it quite well, fairness.
Aye, like MJF. There's a few guys that do it, but like, I mean, like, if you're out having at a restaurant and like, you wouldn't, back in the 90s, 2000s, you wouldn't go up to the Undertaker and ask for an autograph because you'd be scared in case he beat the shit out of you. So I don't understand why they can't just keep that going. Like you say, this merchandise sales, they need to make money, but I think they would make more money by doing it.
I agree. I totally agree, and it kind of takes away the whole mystique of what you're seeing there. Because, like, I remember, was it my wee cousin? I think it was my wee cousin. We were at a wrestling event, and this was like I think at the time I was kind of like, I knew that, you know, it was a work. It wasn't really real, if that makes sense. And my cousin was about, I want to say like 7, 8. And we were at the back, and The Undertaker and Triple H were in a heated feud at the time. And they walked out together. They walked out and walked on the bus. And my cousin's like, but they hate each other. Why are they like laughing with each other? And I was like, I've just found this out, man. It's not great. I'm not gonna lie to you, pal. They're not really that bad, by the way. I mean, they're probably best friends, but it's kind of like show business type. And I just remember he was so confused and so upset that I think he went angry. I was like, fuck off. But you see, going back to what you were saying about the moves that they do, I would 100% agree with you, because a super kick, right? This, because it was Jim Ross actually said this a while ago as well. The super kick is the most overused move in wrestling just now. And when you think back, I could only really remember Shawn Michaels doing it, and that was a Sweet Chin Music. And when he hit that, it was, you know, lights out, game over. Whereas nowadays, finishers aren't finishers. Finishers are more of a, you expect to see a finisher every match from both sides. Whereas when I grew up, you didn't really. You only seen one, and then that was the finisher. You know, like I understand, obviously, like the leg drop from Hulk Hogan isn't going to be as severe as what it is back in the 90s, but it's still a finisher. You have to protect that. It's how many? Remember, what was the match? Was it no? I can't remember. But Brock done about 7F5 to a person. Why would you have to 7F5? You should be doing one. You know, nowadays you see like Drew McIntyre doing a Claymore 3 or 4 times in a match. Like, well, it should be one. It's just finisher. It should be your end of match. Do you know what I mean? That's just my opinion on that. Finishers are quite shit now, because not shit in terms of looking at them, but the kind of I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but I know what I'm trying to say. That means.
No, I get what you mean, man. Like this, like if you remember back in again, acting like old men talking about the old days, but you've got, yeah, I mean, even like 2012, 13, you would hit a finisher. If somebody kicked out of it, it would be like,
it's a big thing.
I like, oh my, how's he kicked out of that? Like the only things that's coming to my head is like when Triple H hit a pedigree, somebody would kick out of it, and you'd be like, this match is this is brilliant.
The only two I can think of that were quite protected was the AA or the FU by John Cena. That was quite protected, and the Tombstone. And the one I distinctly remember, I remember it so well, I can't remember if it was WrestleMania 27 or 28, but it was Triple H, and he'd done, I think it was 27, and he'd done the whole, Kenny did that, he'd done the taunt, he'd done the Tombstone on Undertaker, and then he'd done the tongue out and everything. You thought that's a sneak over, and he kicked out. But that said, I remember as well Shawn Michaels kicking out of it at WrestleMania 26, and you're like, whoa, that was fucking amazing. You know, that's brilliant. But then nowadays you're seeing like, you know, say for instance, Randy Orton does an RKO, you're thinking that's going to be a 2 count probably, whereas it should be that's game over. False finishes are good, but they need to be done right.
They've got a time and place, man. It's like if you're watching UFC and somebody kicks somebody in the head, and they go out every single time when somebody hits them with this, and then you just start seeing people getting kicked in the head and just no acting to it. You'd be like, what's happened here? Like,
I remember one match. I remember watching Johnny Gargano against Adam Cole at TakeOver New York, I think. And it was a 5-star match. Dave Meltzer rated it 5-star, and I agree. I thought it was absolutely amazing. And there were quite a few false finishes in that match, but it worked. It made sense. You know, it kind of it worked to the environment. It worked to the crowd. It worked to everything. It was an incredible match. But nowadays you're seeing it every fucking match, and you're like, come on, you don't need to see a false finish every match. You know, I know people want to try and keep their character looking strong, but sometimes you've got to just do, like, for instance, Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania Royal Rumble 2020, just last year, when Drew hit him with that Claymore. I mean, he sold the shit out of that. It was unbelievable, and it made Drew look $1 million. These are the things that have to happen, you know, and I think it needs to be, I don't know, I'm rambling on, but I am. I'm like an old man right now. I'm just like, wrestling isn't as good as what it was in the 90s.
All I always say is, man, like you don't need to. The problem that I have with wrestling across the board is everybody tries to go and hit it out the park every single week.
Yeah.
Like your Monday Night Raw, Nitro, AEW Dark, or AEW, no AEW Dark, Dynamite. Everybody goes out and just tries to have this like 5-star amazing match every single week, and it's like save that for a pay-per-view. The whole point is you get people to buy in to watch every week. Like
100%.
if you're watching a TV show, the season finale is going to be this big huge thing. But if every single episode is this big huge thing, you're going to be like, what are they going to do at the end? Like
Exactly.
like nuke the planet or something. You know what I mean? Like
See, I liked, I really enjoyed the Royal Rumble just then with Goldberg against Drew. I was the biggest critic of the match actually taking place because I didn't think Goldberg deserved a title shot. But the match itself, I really enjoyed, and it wasn't a 5-star match. It wasn't a spectacular match. It was kind of, and you look at it, it was a shit match, but it was a good story, and that's really important. Like I always remember WrestleMania 17. I know I'm going off, but I did warn you I was going to be doing this. WrestleMania 17. I think one of the best matches on that card was Vince McMahon against Shane McMahon. It wasn't a good wrestling match, but the story was so fucking good, and you were so involved in it. You were so engrossed in what was going to happen. I remember saying to my friend at work, because we were talking about that, and I went, you got to look at that match. You've got Vince, you've got Shane, you've got Linda, you've got Stephanie, you've got Trish, and you've got Foley. Foley at the time was the only trained wrestler. So you've got 5 people who have got not a Scooby-Doo, really, because Trish wasn't at the time. Trish was still, she was a valet at best. You've got 5 people who had no right to be in that ring, and they made it work. And when Linda stood up, the place erupted. That's what it should be like nowadays. That's what the investment should be.
Man, you talking about that is one of my favourite ones is WrestleMania 19, Hogan against McMahon. When the storyline up to that, because it was so much from like you left and like the drug issues were because of you, and everybody was just bought into that.
100%. That was a shoot, though. Let's be honest. That was. I bet a lot of that was true. You know what I mean? But friends both went. You know what? Gloves off. Let's just go for it. We'll just see what we think.
But like all the good matches that happened at WrestleMania 19, all you really remember, well, all I really remember is that Hogan McMahon match when it's just like blood everywhere, ladders out, them just having like this
I have to
brawl.
I do remember Broughton breaking his leg, his neck. That was WrestleMania.
I know that happened on it as well, but just like the brawl from that when I was younger,
you're right.
I remember watching it and being like, "What the hell is this?"
Even when you look at it, though, even the angle Brock Lesnar, that was a storyline in itself. That went on for that was all about who was the best wrestler, who was the both NCAA, one was Olympic champion. It just worked. Everything was right there. Whereas now I just have this thing. I have a gripe about the fact that every month is a different opponent for someone. Like you look back in the 90s, again, we're going back to the 90s, but you've got like a feud lasted for about 8 months. And then it had its, like, if you look at McMahon Austin, as much as it wasn't a feud as such physical, it was a feud in regards to, like, weekly television. It did have a final payoff eventually, whether it be 17, whether it be St. Valentine's Day Massacre, I don't know. Rock Austin, same again. Triple H, all these guys, these feuds lasted for fucking years, not just like 1 month. Because remember when Drew first got the title? Is it no that he went Lashley, then he went Seth Rollins, then he went Ziggler, then he went Orton, then he went someone else, and this was he's only had a title for like 8 months, 9 months at the time, from when he lost it at Hell in a Cell. That for me, like the Jey Uso and the Roman Reigns storyline, that lasted a bit longer, and I enjoyed it. Kevin Owens one right now, I'm enjoying it because it's a bit longer, it's a bit more of a story rather than like, right, who's next? You. Oh, you're shit. Oh, I'm going to win. Game over. Next. Whereas it's a bit more of a story involved and there's a bit more, bit of a buy-in from the band's point of view.
So one of the questions is, what's something that you dislike about today's product? Is that what it would be for you? That it's just kind of like that short booking, no long kind of site?
I think it's like you said. I think nowadays, they're I think they're trying to get a 5-star match. Every match has to be blown at the park. whether it be, like you say, on Main Event or whether it be at WrestleMania or All or Nothing, whatever. Everything's got to be this superb match. But build a storyline. That's what I'd be more interested in. I don't need to see a five. I know what a 5-star match looks like. I've seen it. But I also love watching a match where you're just involved in. You're just totally sucked into. Whereas nowadays, you don't really see that. Like the Randy Orton Drew McIntyre feud was really good. I enjoyed that. Because it was a proper feud. It was about four times they fought each other.
Mm-hmm.
So we look at 2020. Actually, 2020 wasn't. I think 2020 was a great year for wrestling, to be honest. But I just think, looking back, it was more of a case of I just give us a bit more storyline than just making sure it's a good match.
I think that would probably be the same as me. Like, it should just be more like let people work something. Do you know what I mean? Like, if it works and if the crowd isn't feeling it, or if it's not getting the right response, then you can start to change it. But you need to give it time. Like, you're giving it 1 week. Like again, Lana and Nia, they're back against each other. Like, nobody is saying, "Oh, we want to see this." Nobody is saying we want to see this. But they're like, "Okay, we'll just keep going because we've got a cool like." It went viral. Somebody shouting "my hole," and it's like, well, you could have went viral by actually putting a good story in there, and like letting shit advance instead of from just being like "my hole." Let's go viral. Have a 4-minute match, which is.
I think as well, though, like I don't know, like you've got so many good. I genuinely believe that ability-wise, this is the best roster WWE's ever had. And I do watch AEW a lot. In fact, I really enjoy AEW, but I'm just going WWE because it's more mainstream. This is probably the best roster ability-wise, where you've got Seth, you've got AJ, you've got Kevin Owens, you've got Sami Zayn, you've got Dolph Ziggler, you've got Randy Orton. You could go on and on and on about how many good wrestlers they have, and that's not even talking about the women's division. But they just, I don't know, like, I have a big gripe as well about Edge winning the Royal Rumble. I'm probably in a minority. If you disagree with me, cool, fine. I appreciate, I respect that. That doesn't bother me. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. My opinion, obviously, is I genuinely think that the Edge winning the Royal Rumble, it's not needed. Edge is big enough to be headlining WrestleMania without the Royal Rumble victory. That should have been given to someone who's got, the strain or to push them up a level. Edge doesn't need to be pushed up a level. He's Edge. He's however many time world champion. He's headlined WrestleMania previously. Money in the Bank. Mr. Money in the Bank. You could probably say, to be honest. But like, what's wrong with maybe giving that to Big E? What's wrong with giving that to maybe, as much as I don't think he's a champion material, but Cesaro? What's wrong with giving that to Nakamura again? Maybe that's my gripe on that on wrestling now. It's just they keep saying they want to hear the fans and they listen to the fans. They're not, because they wouldn't be doing what they're doing if they did. Okay, they changed heel to Roman Reigns. That was a great move, and I think he's thriving on that. He's doing absolutely fantastic. But from other sides, so and that I don't think they are.
100%, man. I don't think, like, for me personally, I didn't mind Edge winning. I like Edge, but if I was going to give it to somebody, I'd maybe give it to Damian Priest or something. Like, build that a brand new person, especially Damian Priest. I love his work in NXT. He could have came up and put on a hell of a match at WrestleMania, even if he didn't get the win. But Edge could have just, like, Damian Priest and Edge at the end. Priest eliminates Edge to do like a false finish or something like that. Then it has like a little rivalry into WrestleMania, because you still got 2 months till it happens. Build something in between it, and then have them go on to do the match at WrestleMania with whoever, like, or okay, the right to who won it, Edge against Damian Priest or something. I think they'll two would put on a great match, but just no, everybody's just like, no, Damian Priest is 38, and I'm like,
who cares? Who cares?
If he's making money, if he looks good in the ring, it doesn't really matter about age.
Age doesn't matter. I don't give a fuck if you're 38 or 20. You know what I mean? Whatever you can do in front of in that four square circles, all that matters. I look at my favourite right now is AJ Styles, and I think is he not older?
I think he must be
40 or something. I think AJ Styles has got everything. He's got ahead of him. He's absolutely amazing. Okay, he might be winding down to the end of his career, but I still think he's one of the best in the world today. You know, Daniel Bryan, as much as I'm not a huge fan of him, but he's a fantastic ability in the ring. Again, age, who gives a shit? I don't care what a person is. I think they should have, in the Royal Rumble, I think they should have gave more chances to NXT. Because if I'm right in saying NXT was only represented in the Men's Royal Rumble by Damian Priest, who's now at Raw. So technically they weren't represented at all. So why not put Adam Cole in? Why not put Johnny Gargano in? Why not put, Ciampa in? Why not put, I could go on and on and on again here, you know what I mean? But why not give them? Like, I would love to see, why can I not remember his name now? That's how much I love to see him.
The pressure.
Fuck, what's his name? Bruiserweight. English boy.
Walter.
No.
The
one who Walter took the title off.
Pete Dunne.
Aye, Pete Dunne. I'd love to see him. That's great, eh? Fucking see him with the come to and everything. Yeah, give someone like that the opportunity to go into. I know he was there last year. I think he was in 20. I'm sure he was in 2021. But just I don't know. I couldn't give a shit to see fucking Hurricane Helms again. I really couldn't. I'd rather see someone like that.
When I do like a watch along on the channel, so like Raw and Nitro, 93 is what I'm going for Raw because I just started it in the past couple of months, which is some of it's terrible. Like so today I was filming it for Sunday, and it was Crush, which like who remembers Crush for like 1993 against.
He had that luminous. You know, like a luminous kind of like, and had the checkered.
No, this was at the. He did have that, but this was at the point when he had like the lightning one.
Oh yeah.
And he was wrestling a wrestler called Bobby Who.
Bobby Who. Did Crystal cut a promo once in like a fucking dump? I'm sure he did. Like, you know where you put the cars to get crushed, like totally crushed. He cut a promo with there once. I remember watching it going, "You are so cool." I was like 8 at the time, thinking this is the shit. You know what I mean? This genuinely was shit.
No, but I think a lot of times we like just wrestling fans and wrestlers as well, like they have this poor. By this age, I have to do this. So like, I turned 30 this year, and a lot of people are like, "Oh, have you already done all like a few checklist?" And I'm like, "Life isn't a checklist. Just like wrestling, I keep telling people like, if you're 38, like Diamond Dallas Page, then you start to like be 35, whatever. Like people just, you show somebody a picture of Diamond Dallas Page in what 99, they wouldn't say he was in what nearly in his 40s. Well, he was in his 40s. He just. Like,
I remember speaking to a few wrestlers, obviously, when I was doing the podcast. And I remember the best way to describe it was there's never a right way to do something. Just because it happened for someone doesn't mean it's going to happen to you. So look at Asuka. She's, 40 now? Near enough 40? She's been around for years. Finn Balor, he's no spring chicken, but he's unbelievable. He's been around for years upon years as well. So there's no right way. And if anything, Damian Priest probably done it the right way because he's got a bit more. Like, I always remember, this is going to sound really weird, but there is Method to my Madness here. Elton John used to always say he hates people that does the X Factor because they don't have the miles from going to like being heckled on stage to doing it in front of like 40 people. And it's exactly the same as wrestling. Just because like if you come just straight from the power center, performance center, sorry, that doesn't automatically mean you are better than Damian Priest, who's went through all the indies. He's done it. There's no right way of doing things. And if anything, Damian Priest has done it the right way because he's been at every part of the ladder in regards to being a wrestler.
100%, man. I think as well, a lot of people, if you remember being 18, 17, 16, you look at somebody you look at somebody that's like turning 30, in their 30s, you're like, oh, that's you're done. But then when you get to this age, you're like, oh, I've got fucking years left, like 35 years left.
Exactly.
I'm all right, you know what I mean? I'm still a child.
Exactly. Look at Ian Wright, the footballer for Arsenal. He never started playing until he was 23.
I think a lot of people they judge like a lot. If you look on Twitter and stuff, obviously you do like you see like them going, oh, wrestling's suffering with a problem. Everybody's too old, and it's like, no, they're putting on great match. They're in the prime of their career. Prime career wise, anywhere, any business is between 35 to 45, 50,
I would
30
say
to 45,
40,
something
because
like
I
that.
remember when Rock fought Cena. Was Rock no like 40 at the time, and he was kind of, they were saying that's his peak. You know,
I still think. So, what's the one thing you would pinpoint about the product? You'd be like, I love this about today's wrestling. If you had to talk it up to somebody,
oh Christ, that's a good question. What would I love?
about today's product.
I would love, and it's not so much about the product, but I love the fact that there's so much variety. And by I mean by that is people are great. Everything's negative nowadays, and that's what really pisses me off. Right, everything's got to be negative. Trolls galore, you name it. If your opinion's not the same, you're going to be getting attacked on whatever it is because you can hide behind the keyboard. Fuck you. That's all I've got to say to that. Say it in the face if that's the case, right? We're from Scotland. We know how to deal with things. You know what I'm saying? But today's thing, just because people don't like WWE, that doesn't mean you don't have to dislike wrestling because you've then got AEW. If you don't like AEW, you've got Ring of Honor. I love Ring of Honor. Love Ring of Honor. I think they've got so much. By the way, shout out to my man Shane Taylor and SOS and O'Shea Edwards and Ron Hunt. You guys are doing fantastic at Shane Taylor Promotions. Ring of Honor is amazing. If you don't like Ring of Honor, you've got Impact. If you don't like Impact, you've got CZW. If you don't like CZW, I could be here forever. You've got MLW, whatever. For us, we've got ICW. Brilliant. That's what I love about today's market, today's products, is there's so much variety. Whereas, you look at people that are about, say, I don't know, 25, 20, they only had WWE. They had TNA. Okay, fair enough. TNA was good for a duration of time, and it's came back, and well done to them for doing that. But you didn't like WWE, you were kind of out of the wrestling world because especially in the UK, TNA wasn't as easy to watch as what WWE is today, or what anything is today. So yeah, I mean that for me is something that's brilliant. The matches are obviously they stand by themselves. The match qualities are a lot better. Looking back at the Attitude Era, was there even a 5-star match? Probably not. I mean, I could probably say Austin Bret Hart was, but was that not just near the start of the Attitude Era? Whatever, Whereas now, Dave Meltzer's giving creams to bloody Kenny Omega and Okada and all that. But rightly so, because they put on fantastic matches. So that's another thing, is the match quality is if you like athleticism and all that kind of stuff, then that's kind of today's the best generation to watch it for.
Definitely, man. Like, my positive is just how much wrestling there is. It's everywhere. People can say that wrestling isn't cool anymore or whatever, but it's everywhere. Like, you've got the network, Impact's got their network. You've got Fight TV, which has got an insane amounts of the indies on it.
Yeah.
ICW for us, but the English wrestling promotions have totally faded me. You've got Europe's got insane amounts of.
They've got Evolve over there in that as well, and they've got loads. Australia, by the way, don't forget about them. They've got some mad stuff going on down there. They've got some amazing, like Rhea Ripley and that. They're just the start of people coming from Australia. They're going to be crazy soon.
There's so many, there's so much to watch, but then the other problem is it saturated the market? It's a weird scale. There's so much good wrestling now that then has it saturated the market of wrestling. So obviously WWE's you're probably the peak of it. They're the biggest company in wrestling.
100%. I'll always be that way.
Aye, but there's no way it's like trying to take down the NFL or something like that. You know what I mean?
It's not.
But I think there's so much good wrestling, but then WWE's who doesn't reflect it at this time. I feel that they're always 4 or 5 years behind, and you're talking about people that are 25 to 20 that only watch WWE.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all they had, because TNA, as much as TNA was good to watch, that was you had to be a wrestling fan to go find TNA.
Yeah.
You're in HMV looking through to get the DVD of it and stuff.
Totally agree. Totally agree. I remember watching TNA. I was thinking, this is so fucking cool. Like, because it was. I think I was actually 1 point more TNA than I was WWE, because like, I remember when they had Voodoo Kin Mafia with it was the Road Dogg and Billy Gunn, and they went Voodoo Kin Mafia, and then they had like Samoa Joe at the start, AJ Styles, then they brought in Christian Cage, Hall, Nash, Pac, Booker T, Sting, Kurt Angle. I mean, that was an insane roster. No wonder they went skin. You know what I mean?
Everybody always forgets, like, TNA had the Lockdown pay-per-view, which every match was in a cage. And I remember everybody going, why did WWE not do a Hell in a Cell pay-per-view? That would make so much sense. Then they do the Hell in a Cell and didn't do it correctly, just ruined it.
Brilliant, eh? That was amazing.
No, but...
was it no Cody Rhodes and Ted DiBiase were in a Hell in a Cell match? Like, what the fuck are they doing in Hell in a Cell?
I think it was I think the first one I kind of watched before I started going away for wrestling, but the last one it would be, was Triple H, Shawn Michaels against Legacy, and I was like, I can't watch this. This is, why have they got a pay-per-view Hell in a Cell? Like, this is...
I remember as well. There was one that it was McMahon's Shane and Vince and the Big Show took on Triple H and Shawn Michaels. I actually enjoyed that. I remember watching it going, this is pretty good. You know, I remember that's when Triple H smashed the hit sledgehammer over Vince's back, and Shane kissed Big Show's ass on it. I was quite enjoying it, but there has been some Hell in a Cell. Thinking it totally takes away the mystique of it all. It's like when people going about Brock Lesnar, like, why he's so part-time because he's never there. Yeah, he's not really always there, but see, when he arrives, it causes a ripple in people talking. It's something. You know, it's like you look back at the 80s, Andre the Giant, he wasn't around every week because he was an attraction. And that's what Hell in a Cell should be. That's what Elimination Chamber should be. That's what TLC should be. These things should be the end of a feud. It shouldn't be a pay-per-view. You know, that I'm looking at, like what you're saying, you're going through that like old stuff. I'm looking through old pay-per-views like St. Valentine's Day Massacre, Backlash, what was the one? Capital Punishment, all these kind of things. These were cool because they were like unique pay-per-views rather than Hell in a Cell pay-per-view or TLC pay-per-view. Bring back the different types of pay-per-views. That would be something I'd love to see.
100%, man. Just like they could just have the pay-per-views and then at the end of a feud have a Hell in a Cell, so like it means something, like Cactus Jack, Triple H from the 2000 No Way Out, which is...
Oh, by the way, what a match.
Or like if you think like cage matches, like the one you shared the other day that I was watching when you shared it, which was weird. Bret Hart versus Owen Hart. Yeah. You know, like the blue cage, and I was like, oh, this is the probably the best blue cage one. But if you think that would meant something, like it literally made Owen Hart look insane. And then you've got like the first Elimination Chamber as well, which was probably the best one. But so the other question we've got is, where do you see yourself in 10 years? Do you see yourself still being a fan? Do you see yourself being in the business more? Or
I'd like to think so. I'd like to be a bit more involved in the business. Like I've spoke to you off there. I'm not really going too much in, but I have spoke a few bigger companies in regards to dealing with a bit more involved in it. And you know, I've always wanted to. I always remember talking like, what's your passion, Stuart? I like wrestling. Really? You're like, you feel like it's a dirty word, but like, I don't give a fuck. I'm like, yeah, I like wrestling. It's cool as fuck. I'm 35. I'm enjoying this shit. You know what I mean? And I'll be enjoying it when I'm 75. I know that for a fact. You know, times roll changes. You know, life changes and all that kind of stuff. But I'll still always be enjoying it. I generally don't think I've been as enjoying it as much than I ever have today. If that makes sense. This is like, I'm watching it all the time and I'm enjoying every second of it. And from being in with the podcast, I've been fortunate enough to you know get a bit of a rapport with people involved in the industry. So you know, there's always hopefully doors opening for me. So you know, yeah, definitely in 10 years I can see myself still in love with the business as much as I have now, and hopefully a bit more involved in it.
Yeah, man,
providing my work lets me.
I remember being...
those trains aren't going to run themselves.
I always forget you work in trains, man. I'm like, it's such a... It's just such a weird thing to do. Like, I didn't even know they had like train workers part for the ticket people. Like,
No,
I get train drivers and stuff. But I don't know anything about that at all. I'm like so blind to it. Like, I don't use trains. I don't...
Good, keep it that way. I hope nobody uses trains because I want an easy life.
But I remember getting my physics book when I was in high school, and like, don't decorate it whatever you want, like put a paper in it or something. People coming in with like Celtic stuff and all that kind of stuff. I know you're the other side, but I grew up where Celtic was the only place. So then I got ECW, so I had an ECW one, so I put that on. It was like blood and all that everywhere. And they were like, you can't put this on it. And I was like, how? You said I can do what I want to, and I'll do something you like. I like wrestling, and that's what I was doing. And I remember them just being probably like, that's not really wrestling, is it? And I'm like, it is. It's like, at the time, I was a pure ECW fan. Like, I was probably... I mean, like, I was like, ECW is like the best wrestling, which it clearly isn't. But I appreciate it better now when I'm older. When I was younger, it was just like, this is just a different thing what everybody else is watching.
Then I never say to Castro Valentine that hardcore wrestling isn't wrestling, by the way. You'll fucking cut you up. I'm telling you now.
No, man, I used to... So I've done wrestling for a few years till I broke my neck. But it was like an insane... Like, I was what I used to do. Like, that was like my... I used to... The chairs, tables, fire, tacks, everything. I loved that. But then, like, I got older and I was like... I kind of started to appreciate, like, the actual being safe in the ring and not, like, hurting yourself in it. I was like, that makes me a business sense than what I was doing. But so finishing off for last couple of questions. Who's your favourite wrestler of all time? Like, one person you could watch non-stop.
Only one.
A modern and an old school one. I've got two. So
a modern and an old school one. Right. Well, I've got to say nowadays it's got to be Drew for me. Just everything. Like, A, he's a Rangers fan. Big him up. B, being Scottish. C, I mean, I've watched Drew from being an I'm a huge ICW fan. I've loved them for ages, man. And I remember when Drew and Jack Jester were going through their feud first time round, not when he first came back, before he went to WWE. I remember all that stuff. And it's just stuff now. It's just brilliant, man. I just love watching Drew. You know, the guy's a stud. He genuinely is. He's chiseled to fuck. He just looks the part. You know, the kilt when he walks out. I remember when he first walked out when it was that Randy Orton match on Raw, and he walked out with the Claymore and the kilt, and I was like that. I was like, oh my days, like I could be like a Mudgy with the love hearts in his eyes. You know what I mean? He looks amazing. So Drew would be my modern. I've got to say The Rock. As much as I love, I can go Stone Cold Jericho. Undertaker, actually Undertaker maybe not so much. Mick Foley I loved, but I've got to be The Rock. The Rock's just a man. You know what I mean? He's just a gem. You know, or is it Savage? Nah, going with The Rock. He was the man for me. I loved him. He was class. You know, whether he was a fake. See, he's one of them. I would say him and Triple H would probably be the best people that can be hated as much as a heel, but loved as much as a face. Mm-hmm. You know, very rarely can you have someone that can switch between both. Like I going back to Drew. Drew's good as a face, but he's amazing as a heel. Mm-hmm. You know, he's better as a heel as a face. Whereas Rock and Triple H, those two could go between each other, I think. Yeah, but for me, overall, be The Rock.
So the Drew McIntyre stuff, I love what he's doing just now. Obviously, ICW, being from Glasgow. The Dallas goes to my doctors. Like,
really?
I see him quite a lot. I remember it from Maryhill, the ICW in the community centre in Maryhill, which was like 6 people going to it. You know what I mean? I remember turning up to it. It was like me, my friend, and 2 other people, and that was it. And it was like a whole 4-hour show. Like, I was like, how are these guys making money? It's only me. Like, yeah. But like, that's how I remember that and then seeing them now, like on the network and stuff. You're like, It is good. And then you'll get like the newer fans that are like, oh, I've watched them for a couple of years. You're like, you don't even know how terrible it was.
I remember it was for me. I was after that. I was after Mary Hell. I was Barrowlands when it was starting off there. But then, like you say though, to be from the Barrowlands to Hydro is just mad. Absolutely.
It's insane to see how far they've came, and like it's no out of nowhere. It's just hard work. They've just
100%.
continuously put the time and stuff in. But favourite wrestlers for me is Sting, because when I first seen him as a kid, I was like, that's a professional wrestler. And today it has to be Rhea Ripley. She's brilliant. I think she does everything great, and it's not because she's a woman or whatever. Just that she's just a good wrestler. I don't even, when she wrestles, I don't even see like, oh, it's women wrestling or men, whatever. I'm just like, it's just good wrestling.
See, for me, I love the women's wrestling because I've got 2 daughters. So for me, it's great to, like, if it was back when it was me, like at my age, when I was first watching it, it was just bra and panties, or it was like it was a mud fight or whatever it was, or it was a lingerie match. It was just so. I loved it. Don't get me wrong, I loved it. But it was really degrading as such. It wasn't really like, apart from Lita and Trish were probably the only 2 that I could really think of. But nowadays, like you say, you've got Rhea Ripley, you've got Sasha Banks, you've got Charlotte Flair, you've got, I could go on and on and on. They're all brilliant wrestlers. They're so good. And like I say, my daughter watching it, it's great for them to see, because that does mean that, there is hope for them as well, not just have to be male. Talk of the devil this year.
100%. And the other one is, what's your favourite event of all time? Like
Royal Rumble.
Royal Rumble. That's what I would say as well.
Because I genuinely feel like a Royal Rumble, it's like Christmas. Whereas WrestleMania is great, WrestleMania is brilliant, I love it, but it's a spectacle. Whereas Royal Rumbles are just a fucking amazing. You actually you're like, WrestleMania, you always get to kind of know roughly who's going to win. And you do get that such a Royal Rumble, but, it's always the if, buts, or maybes. Because you've got that many people to pick from. It's great. Like this year's one, I never had a clue who was going to win. No.
I always describe Royal Rumble as the Christmas of wrestling, and WrestleMania's New Year, because that's when everything kind of gets like a fresh start. New Year's the kind of the party and the balloons and all that kind of stuff, but Christmas is the thing you really like.
I would actually put, for me personally, I would obviously put, this is going to be controversial as fuck, and I don't care, but Royal Rumble for me, then I would put, back in the day, Backlash ahead of WrestleMania, because I always thought Backlash was fucking amazing. I always remember Backlash 2000 when Stone Cold came back, and it was The Rock against Triple H, and it was just like, it was always the same matches. Everyone used to say, oh, WrestleMania is the end of a feud, or that's a blow-off. No, it's not, because you've got Backlash. Backlash was the identical card to WrestleMania. Mm-hmm. It just wasn't as much pyros and all that kind of shit. But it was fucking amazing. I remember Jeff Hardy once, because Backlash, if you remember, they had like, it was like the arena, they had like these kind of claws.
Yeah, I remember that.
I remember Jeff like ran onto one and then jumped off it and done a Hurricane Man on somebody. I'm like, this is insane. I used to always love Backlash. It was class. Loved it.
I think Backlash was, like you said, it was literally just the WrestleMania card, but like a month later, and it was the exact same stuff that they'd done, but for some reason it just felt like,
it felt like Sunday Night Heat.
Aye. Like, no, a lot of people are watching this, and it felt like more special.
It was brilliant. I don't know why. I don't know if it was because, I mean, obviously now WrestleMania is always going to be in a stadium. It's never going to be an arena again. But like, you're looking at the ones previously, I think WrestleMania 17, that was in an arena, that was in a stadium, and then Backlash after that was in like a normal like hall type arena. And I just felt a bit better. I don't know, because I also think WrestleMania now, you're never going to get, like, if you look back at WrestleManias, right? Can you think of an absolute amazing pop
at a WrestleMania?
At WrestleMania. Like Edge, when Edge came back last year, that was a pop.
Aye. I'm trying to think of like
Hardys,
a good one.
The Hardys, I would say the Hardys. When they came back at WrestleMania 33, I think it was.
Aye, I totally forgot about that. The ones I've been thinking of have been like in stadiums, so like Hogan Rock, like that pop when they came out, Rock Austin, like just there's lots of stuff.
What I mean by that though is because it's a stadium, it kind of loses its effect of being a pop. Whereas in the arena, like Madison Square Garden was probably the best for it because it was so compact. Like I don't know if you've been to Madison Square Gardens.
I have been.
Aye, so you know what it's like. You're kind of like not compact in, but you're no a million miles away. Whereas you would be at WrestleMania, and a lot of the pops from what I believe, a lot of the stuff that happens at WrestleMania is like fed in through the sound team. So that's for me anyway. I love WrestleMania. Don't get me wrong. I genuinely love it, but I think there's other things like Royal Rumble, for instance, is better for me.
And if you could go back and wrestle in or go visit the event or whatever in any time in history, what would be one match you would take part in, and what event would it be on?
Take part in?
Aye, so like if you could take part in it as commentary or like or like a fan even just being there watching it for the very first time.
I think the one event I wish I went to was WrestleMania 28 at Miami. When The Rock's John Cena for the once in a lifetime that ended up being twice. And the one of the matches I genuinely was obsessed with was the Hell in a Cell, Triple H and Undertaker with Shawn Michaels, special guest referee. I loved that. That was just unbelievable. And I just don't know, like that's kind of WrestleMania that doesn't really get mentioned a lot because it was so good. The whole lineup was brilliant. I think that was the one that started off with Sheamus defeating Daniel Bryan in like 3 seconds in that. But then it ended up with The Rock overcoming John Cena. I just loved that WrestleMania. It doesn't get enough credit in my opinion.
I mean, for me, it would be a way back, so I would go back to go see Hogan versus Andre, just to experience it. But like, because WrestleMania 3's card was great as well, but to experience that slam and just be there would have been really good. Like the start of modern professional wrestling, if that kind of makes sense. Well,
the slam heard around the world.
Yeah, I was talking about that on the show the other day. So is there anything you want to sign off with? Where can people find you? Where can they?
Yeah, I mean, you won't find me really on Twitter, to be honest. I just talk a lot of shit on there. I talk about wrestling, movies, anything that comes into my head, computer games, all that kind of stuff. Check me out if you want. It's at slawson1417. That's slawson1417. No trolls allowed, just so you know. But no, it's just a bit of fun. I mean, you comment a lot on my stuff, which I appreciate. But yeah, just check out. It's just I don't know. Just I talk about a lot of shit, to be honest, but it's good fun. It's good fun. I like to think anyway.
I mean, the links will be in the bio below for your Twitter and stuff like that. It is actually fun to see when you talk about when you share like movies and stuff like that. Some movies you share, I forget, and I'm like, oh, not seen that in ages.
What was it last night? Walking Tall, wasn't it? Was it Walking Tall with Michael Douglas?
You shared that
movie.
For some reason, I have from when I was younger, Walking Tall and then Starship Troopers are like they're two totally different movies. But like I always, when I see one, I think of the other.
Right.
And then all day I've been like, I'm like, I need to watch Starship Troopers, and I'm like, why do I need to watch this? It's like it's a bad good movie, but I'm like so annoying. So I'm probably going to watch that and Walking Tall when I'm doing some like workout stuff. So man, if you wait there, I'm going to end the recording, and then I'll have a wee conversation with you.
Cool, man.